Okay, good evening, everybody. It is good to see you by way of video. Actually, I'm not seeing you, but good to be with you. I'm glad you could be with us to watch this video tonight. It is Wednesday, August the 12th, and before we get into the text that we're going to look at tonight, in the way of announcements, just want to remind you that we are still doing one service on Sunday mornings right now at 10 o'clock, and anyone who's able and willing and would like to be there, we would love to have you. There are no Sunday school services yet, and no Sunday night or Wednesday night services other than the Wednesday night videos that we're trying to keep out there for you. And as any of that changes, we'll try to let you know. We are encouraging folks to practice social distancing. We've encouraged folks to keep pews between your family and the next. We've got the deacons are letting folks out one family at a time at the end of the services. And so just a few things like that if you could help us with that, I think that might be a wise thing to do, and those are wise things to do and safe things to do. In the way of prayer requests, I'm sure there are a lot out there, and I wish you'd send me text messages and let me know if there's something specific that we need to pray for you. I know that the Stevens family, they've just gone through a lot lately, and most of them are from our area. And so just remember them in your prayers as they face some of the loss that COVID has brought to their lives. Also, just those in the church family that aren't able to be with us as they would like to be. I know Miss Joe, Miss Rhoda, and the list goes on and on, folks that just aren't able to be there and would love to. So just remember them in your prayers as well. So as far as the lesson for tonight, I'm gonna be pretty brief. I just want to sort of maybe shed a different light on this text than what maybe different maybe than the way I've understood it before. And you may disagree with what I'm going to share tonight. And if you do, send me a message. I'd love to talk to you about it because as you dig into this, I think that there are different directions you could go and make a good case for. But I'm going to share with you what I've come to understand this to mean. But we're in the book of Philippians. We've been in Philippians for a while now, Philippians chapter 1 for a while now. And we're going to be looking tonight at the end of verse 18 and then verse 19 and verse 20. And again, when viewed just kind of on the surface, this seems like a really simple text, but I think it may be a little bit more complicated than we give it credit for sometimes. So let me read this to you, and then we'll come back and make a couple comments. All right. So I'm just going to spin around and read this with you. Philippians 1, beginning verse 18, and we'll go through verse 20. And in this I will rejoice, Paul says. Yes, and I will rejoice because I know that this will lead to my deliverance through your prayers and help from the Spirit of Jesus Christ. I'm going to pause there for just a second because if we stop there, I think this passage kind of says one thing, and if we go on and read the next verse, I think it says something a little bit different, actually quite a bit different. But remember, Paul is in jail. He's in prison in Rome. And so when you read this and you say, he's talking about being able to rejoice, again, that's, it's a fruit of the Spirit to be able to be rejoicing even in times of, imprisonment. But he's talking about rejoicing. And then he says, because I know this will lead to my deliverance. Now, if he's in prison, you would assume that he means deliverance from prison, right? And then he goes on to say, through your prayers and help from the Spirit of Jesus Christ. So again, it looks like he's saying, I'm going to be delivered from prison by way of your prayers and from the Spirit of Jesus Christ or the Holy Spirit, right? But when you read the next verse, something a little bit different happens. Because he goes on to say, my eager expectation about and hope is that I will not be ashamed about anything, but that now as always, with all boldness, Christ will be highly honored with my body, whether by life or by death. So when you factor that into the equation, you start to realize that maybe he's not just talking about deliverance from prison. Maybe he's talking about a bigger type of deliverance, and that is salvation, right? Because how do you call death deliverance from prison, right? That's not really. I don't think that's what he means. You could argue that that's exactly what he means. That that to be, to have experienced death would be a deliverance from prison, but it doesn't sound like what you think it means when you read verse 19, right? I mean, it doesn't sound like that kind of deliverance. He's saying that whether I'm alive or I'm dead, I'm going to be delivered. And again, I think I'm going to submit to you tonight that he's referring to specifically salvation here. Or I think when you look the word up, it actually, the word deliverance, it also indicates vindication or free from blame, right? Which is what salvation is. We don't take the blame for our sin because Christ takes it for us. So deliverance, salvation, vindication, I think this is kind of what Paul's talking about. That he knows that he's going to be delivered, whether he's alive or dead. He will experience deliverance or salvation. Now, I realize that if you're watching closely or paying attention, that you see a problem, right? Or at least I hope you recognize something that looks a little bit like an inconsistency. And that is that Paul seems to hinge his deliverance on the prayers of other people, right? Not his own prayers, prayers of other people, and the Spirit of Jesus Christ. Or again, we could say the Holy Spirit. All right, so if that's the case, right, if his salvation is dependent or hinging on the prayers of other people, then that seems to have some real theological problems with it, because we know through the things that we've read from Paul many, many times before and all through the New Testament, that salvation is not something that others can pray you into, right? It's a gift from God, and it is enacted in our lives by way of faith, our own personal belief. Right, our faith is what establishes the salvation that God gives us, as a gift. So, how can he mean that the prayers of other people in some way determine his deliverance? I don't think he does. I don't think that's what he means at all. I think what he's saying is that the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Jesus, is what sustains our faith, right? Or sustains our deliverance or our salvation. We are saved by faith, but it's the Holy Spirit that maintains that salvation. It's the work of the Holy Spirit that keeps us delivered, that keeps us saved by the grace of God. And I think Paul understands that, and I know that he taught over and over and over again that he would continually pray for the impact of the Holy Spirit on the people in the churches that he planted, and he encouraged them to pray for that for each other. That the work of the Holy Spirit would continue in their lives. And so I think when you really back up and look at all this together, that Paul is simply saying, whatever happens with my imprisonment, whether I live or whether I die, I'm saved, I'm delivered because of the work of the Holy Spirit of Jesus Christ. And he's basically thanking and recognizing the churches, Church at Philippi in particular, for praying for the work of Jesus Christ, the work of the Holy Spirit to continue in his life. He's instructing them to take that mindset. In fact, earlier in the book, the chapter 1, we talked about this before, that Paul, taught that we are to be seeking the will of God in everything that we do. We're supposed to be trying to live out what he's called us to be and to do, regardless of the fact that his Spirit is going to keep us. His Holy Spirit's going to keep us in terms of our salvation, but we're supposed to be eagerly seeking his will in our life and acting out his will in our lives. So that brings one other issue to light, and then I'm just going to close this. But the other issue is, if the people didn't pray that the Spirit of Jesus Christ would move on Paul's life, would the Holy Spirit or the Spirit of Jesus Christ continue to work in Paul's life regardless of their prayers? And the answer to that, Paul answers earlier again in this very chapter, when he talks about how that he who started a good work and you will see it through to completion. Well, Paul believes the same is true of himself, that God who started a good work in him is going to see it through to completion. This is not a question of if people pray enough or pray hard enough, is the Holy Spirit then going to be able to keep him? Paul knows the Holy Spirit's going to be able to keep him. He's simply instructing the people to get their minds focused on the work of God through the Holy Spirit in his life, because he's reminding them that is what establishes or maintains deliverance for all of us, right? So, again, on the surface, and you may see this differently. I'd love to talk to you more about it, but on the surface, it looks like he's just talking about deliverance from prison. And if we stopped right here, I think you might be able to get by with that. That might make sense. But when you get down here to life or death, when you see that he's talking about deliverance regardless of his own survival, I think he's talking about a spiritual deliverance. And again, we would refer to that as salvation, right? Salvation is obtained through faith. It is maintained through the Spirit of Jesus Christ. He's simply instructing the people at Philippi that they should pray for God's Spirit, the Spirit of Christ, the Holy Spirit, however you want to describe him. The people should pray that the Spirit of Christ would have its way in this situation, in this case of Paul's imprisonment, because the Spirit is what's going to maintain his salvation anyway, not a jailer, not an emperor, not anybody else. It's all Jesus Christ that's in control. So, again, if you have questions, if you want to talk more about it, I apologize. I feel a little scatterbrained tonight, and hopefully what I've said made sense. But again, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you about this. That's something that we miss out on Wednesday nights. For those of you who may be watching that aren't usually with us on Wednesday nights, this would be a great Wednesday night study because there would be lots of discussion. I miss that. I miss doing that on Wednesday nights. So if you have a discussion point you want to bring up, please do. I'd love to talk to you more about it, and maybe we can come to a better understanding of it. Maybe you need to do a video next Wednesday and give a different perspective. I won't hold you to that. If you contact me, if you reach out to me, we'll just have a really good conversation. So again, thank you for joining us tonight. If you need me through the week, I hope you'll let me know. If not, I will see some of you on Sunday morning, and we'll have a video of that service broadcast as well. But again, until then, if you need me, let me know. Thanks.